In many schools, science, math, and technology are still taught in isolation from one another, and engineering is rarely taught at all. Even when they are presented, they are rarely linked to real-world work experiences, which a student may see in the future in STEM-related fields of work. It's vitally important to fully integrate STEM into your school's curriculum and furthermore, to offer real-life experiences. One valuable strategy is open-ended science competitions, which provide experiences to students and teachers beyond the classroom. In addition, integrating a STEM curriculum early on can help abolish the fear factor that many students feel and can provide engaging and rewarding opportunities for the students now and in the future. In this live discussion, we will talk about why it's important to integrate STEM into your classroom curriculum and how to do it successfully, as well as open-ended science competitions can further students' interest in one or many STEM fields. Hi, I'm Janine Mooney, Editor-in-Chief of WDD, and with me today is James Brown, Executive Director of the STEM Education Coalition, Vanessa Stratton, Senior Director of Programs for Project Lead the Way, also a former teacher of Project Lead the Way Engineering, Biomedical Science, and Gateway courses, and Glenn Sundin, Executive Director of the Young Mind Awards. We're going to kick it off with the main question at hand. James, why do you think integrating a STEM curriculum and linking to real-world experiences is vital to a student's future?
Well, good morning, Janine. It's a pleasure to be on and to talk about what I think is a really important topic. The real reason why I think we need to make sure kids are learning about STEM in a real-world setting is because that's where the future is. That's where the future of the economy is. That's where the best jobs of the future are. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions about what STEM jobs are. I think parents have a generationally different view of what science and technology is than where kids see it now. And I think integrating STEM into project-based learning, into competitions, into things that get children working together in teams is a really great way of bringing that to real life for students.
Great. And Vanessa, why do you think integrating a STEM curriculum is vital to a student's future?
I think it's so vital because it provides relevancy to what students are learning. And it's not teaching the STEM subject in isolation, but really integrating them and giving students real-world opportunities and problems that really force them to apply science, technology, engineering, and math to a real-world problem that really mimics more of what they would see in the fields of work that are really the future for our country. And it just, that relevancy, the context, and the challenge would be really what would get students excited about those subjects and everything else in their school day.
Absolutely. And let's go to you, Glenn. What do you think about this topic, and why do you think an integrated STEM curriculum is so important?
Well, thanks, Janine. And first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to be on this panel. So actually, it's interesting. I just had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with one of the mechanical engineering professors at Johns Hopkins, and they have what's called a capstone project where local companies will actually sponsor teams to solve a problem, and that is the end result of the entire curriculum. And coming out of that, those students are taking part in that project, A, and B, they have real-world experience working for a company on a project, learning how to project manage and engineer. So those are examples where if they hadn't done that, they wouldn't have real-world experience to look back on.
Absolutely. Now let's talk a little bit about STEM competitions. Vanessa, how can we provide open-ended science competitions? How can they specifically provide experiences to students and to teachers beyond the classroom? And are they a valuable strategy?
I do think open-ended science competitions are a valuable strategy. One reason is that they give students the chance to dive deep into something that they're really passionate about. And it gives them just a wider venue to explore and experience failure over time, experience persisting through those problems over time, and then becoming successful when they reach that culminating experience. I know that we've had many of our Project Lead the Way schools report success and engagement and further excitement from their students by taking part in competitions such as TSA or HOSA or Verizon App Challenges that push students beyond the classroom and give them a sense of ownership and reward that is different from what we can provide in a school setting.
Definitely. And Glenn, so what do you think about this? Are STEM competitions valuable strategy for students?
Yeah, thanks, Janine. I would definitely say they're valuable. What it does is it allows a student to basically capitalize on all the efforts they're doing in the classroom anyway. Since the project might be entered in a competition, they may put more time and effort into it, and actually summarizing what they're already doing basically just maximizes the efforts and the possible recognition and reward from that.
Great. And James, what do you think about the open-ended STEM competitions?
Well, I think the right analogy for this is, learning engineering and technology without having a chance to apply it in a setting like a competition against your peers and maybe winning something or developing some identity out of that would be like us asserting that it would be good to only practice football and not play games. I mean, I think we've talked for a long time about how we need to elevate and recognize scientists and engineers from all walks of life as being vital in society. And one of the better examples of bringing that kind of recognition is what President Obama has done around the White House Science Fair. So now the president brings some of the best minds in the country. They get a chance to be at the White House for a day to really shine, and that's the same thing that we do for winning football teams and basketball teams and baseball teams and soccer teams. I could go on and on and on. The point is, this is also a form of recognition. It's societal recognition that these competitions are a big deal. You can look at pictures of huge football arenas filled with people doing robotics competitions and see there are just as many people there as there might be for a game. So I think it's vital to development. It's also a statement of values that we have such support for organized competition.
Absolutely. And so, Glenn, let's turn the question back to you. Would a STEM-based curriculum further enhance individual learning if boys and girls were separated during STEM instruction?
That's a great question. And actually, let me tell you a little story. Our local high school in Morristown, New Jersey, actually has a Project Lead the Way course on engineering. And the teacher, who actually is an engineer, actually has a girls-only course that she offers. And because of that, A, more females enter, and B, the comparison in the learning is when it comes to the group projects, it's an unfortunate fact that separating the girls from the boys historically has had a tendency to basically have the boys just want to start a project and get it going and not really want to think about how to do it, maybe discuss it first, do a little more planning. And that actually has historically had, until this year when they had the all-girls class, had basically ruined the learning for the girls. Now that they have this class, they have their own groups and they're learning a lot more and they're getting more out of it.
That's great. And so, James, what do you think? Do you think separation of boys and girls would further enhance the individual learning?
Well, I think there are lots of situations where we need to acknowledge that men and women learn differently, have different biases, and teachers also have some of these same subtle cues in how they teach women and men in STEM or girls and boys in STEM. Right. And I don't know that it's a one-size-fits-all answer here. I think there are lots of times where we need to recognize that there are different ways people learn. And it's not just men and women. There are ethnic differences in how we learn. There are differences in how people perceive what STEM careers are that vary by race and ethnicity and age and by development and economics. And I think the teaching and the learning around STEM has to be informed by all those things. There are lots of examples of things working in both ways. The real world is going to have men and women integrated in teams, right? So you've got to acknowledge that as well. But I think it's important to acknowledge that we need to hit kids where they are with good STEM learning opportunities. And that's, some of that is, I think you got to talk broader than do we separate learning by men and boys and girls, and talk about hitting kids where they are. Some kids are going to learn a lot more online. Some are going to benefit from mentorship and personal experience. I think it's about tailoring the STEM learning to where kids are, and this is another generational difference. I'm an engineer myself, and the people who taught engineering courses 25 years ago were not thinking about the STEM pipeline as something that they had ownership over. I think modern educators have to see that if we don't get more kids into these professions, we suffer as a country, and that's a goal we all share to rectify.
Definitely. And Vanessa, let's turn the question over to you. So do you think the separation of boys and girls in the classroom would further enhance the individual learning?
As far as individual learning, one of the ways that we feel you can really enhance that is to start early. We know research has shown that very early on, by second, third grade, girls are already feeling that they are not as good at math and science as boys. And so what we'd like to do is get in early with our launch program, for example, and so that as kindergartners, all boys and girls are seeing themselves as scientists, as engineers. Now, we know not all students have this ability or this opportunity really to take part in STEM programs in school, after school, prior to high school. So we have had some Project Lead the Way schools, as Glenn mentioned, who have reported success with single gender introduction engineering courses, and then they've reported that they go on to mix their courses starting at the sophomore level, and that those girls have built skills and confidence in themselves before they enter the upper level courses where they are mixed gender again. Outside of Project Lead the Way, in a former life when I was teaching science and Project Lead the Way courses, personally, I always started the year with single gender lab groups. And I especially did that in middle school because it's such a time for students to be self-aware and self-conscious. And as was mentioned, boys tend to jump right in and girls tend to hang back and do a lot of the recording and documentation for the labs. And I found that if I spent the first 4, 5, 6 weeks in single gender groups, everyone saw the value of the hands-on portion, everyone saw the necessity of the recording and data and documentation portion, and then I was able to mix them up according to other specifications and other needs beyond gender, and it turned out very successful. So I think there's a lot of ways to address students who may not be as comfortable in STEM subjects and really bring them in, build confidence, build skills, and then prepare them to work in multidisciplinary, multi-gender, multi-ethnic groups as adults.
Thank you. And so the next question is, how can we use curriculum to solve the problem that is 38% of students who start in a STEM major in college don't actually graduate with a degree in the same discipline? So James, what do you think?
Well, I think part of it is preparation, and part of it is the experience of early years in college. And I'll go back to something I said earlier. So I myself am an engineer, and I think, a generation ago, engineering programs had this mentality that our goal as an engineering program was to make sure we don't graduate any bad engineers, so we're going to weed out the ones that aren't ready. And I think nowadays we have to recognize that the engineering skills or science and technology skills at a high level, at a university level, are things that you can teach. You just have to have an approach that meets the students where they are. I think a lot of students are not adequately prepared in some subjects and are prepared in others when they get to college. And I also think one of the, and so university programs need to account for that. They need to be flexible. They need to be able to meet these students where they are. I keep going back to that phrase of we need data and measurement of where students are strong, where they're weak. We need to have an education system that is driving, instructional improvements to the students where they're weak. And the other thing is, I think you'll see a lot of data on the variations across cultural and ethnic boundaries about what a college experience is in STEM fields. And I think that's also something that faculty members and people who are at the sort of seniors and high school level talking about where those skill gaps are. And those are important things for university level curriculum to be able to integrate.
Great. And so Vanessa, what are your thoughts on this problem?
It certainly is a problem, and I think that part of it is really having students feel prepared and informed about what fields they're going into. We know research has shown that students who have had Project Lead the Way courses and other engineering courses persist into their second year of college in those majors. And I think one of the reasons they do that is because they've experienced rigorous STEM curriculum, they've explored fields, they've experienced learning that is challenging and hands-on and where they don't have the right answer the first time. So instead of having your straight A student get to school and experience their first failure their freshman year and decide to change majors, that it wasn't for them, they've already experienced that failure, that persistence, and know that they have the ability to go on and know what they want to do with that degree after college. So just the career exposure, the experience of problem solving and of experiencing failure in a classroom setting and the persistence, anything that we can drive that home before they enter a post-secondary education will help our students make good decisions, be prepared, and persist in their field of choice.
Absolutely. And Glenn, so what are your thoughts on students who start in a STEM major in college and don't actually graduate with a degree in STEM? Is there something we can do to change this?
Well, I actually, I'm not an educator, so I can't really go other than athletic coaching. I can only go from experience, and there, I believe you learn by doing. So adding the open-ended contest to the curriculum early, starting at the elementary and the middle school level, and continuing in that will actually help with the retention rates of the STEM. That's my feeling. I'll be brief on this due to my lack of expertise in the area.
Okay, great. And so for our last question, Vanessa, we'll turn it over to you. STEM fields can seem very intimidating. How can teachers specifically and business professionals help abolish the fear factor that many students may feel?
I think that's a great question, and I think everyone has a role in abolishing that fear. Starting at our schools, one analogy that I really like is that no high school would expect to have a full, high-performing band if their students had not seen those instruments or had the experience and the passion for music prior to entering 9th grade or even college. And that's what we expect of our students entering engineering, entering high-level science, entering computer science. And it's not fair to the students. It's not a reasonable expectation. So if we can start early in elementary, in middle school, and ignite that passion and just provide exposure, then we can start seeing success in high school and in college, instead of just throwing them in and wondering why they're not opting into these courses. I do think it's up to schools to encourage their local communities and business professionals, industry professionals, engage with them and look for opportunities to provide project mentors and speakers and field trips. And again, the old adage of you can't be what you can't see. Our students need to be able to see those opportunities, see themselves in those opportunities to break down those barriers, and so it's not so intimidating or foreign to them.
Great. And James, what do you think can be done to make the STEM field seem a little less intimidating?
Well, I think you're right that there are lots of images of STEM as being only for the best and brightest kids and that they're tough majors and all of the sentiment around that. Those stereotypes are real to some degree. And I think we have to recognize that we don't want to lower expectations about what it means to be a scientist or engineer. I mean, if anybody's seen the movie The Martian, right, I hope we all will agree that we respect the skills that Matt Damon's character represented. Right? He had to learn them, right? He couldn't get by with half answers when lives were on the line. But having said that, I think we also need to recognize that the modern economy has a lot of opportunities to use technical skills, to use math and science that are not just rocket scientist jobs. And so I don't think we have to set the ideal as that you shouldn't think about being a scientist unless you're going to get a PhD in chemistry or physics or engineering. I think we have to recognize that any job in this economy, from jury duty to the shop floor to the classroom to the boardroom, is going to require a knowledge of science and technology, and we need to make sure kids are getting a chance to learn those skills at whatever level it makes sense for them, and that we're also challenging the best students to do their best, and we're helping students who really want to do it get the skills that they can learn with patience and perseverance. But I think recognizing that all kids have some need for science and technology knowledge to be successful in the world.
Definitely. And so, Glenn, let's turn the question over to you. What do you think can be done to make the STEM field seem a little less intimidating?
Well, actually, I think using reverse psychology would work best. I think it's all about expectation management. And if you tell the kids up front that they are going to fail in their endeavors, they're going to hit walls, but they need to persist, they need to keep trying, use trial and error, and eventually they will break through to solve the problem. If they don't know that up front, then they may be disappointed, but if you tell them that's going to happen throughout their career, I think that's what will keep them on the path. And from what I've heard, that's something that doesn't necessarily get communicated to them up front.
Well, that's all the time we have today for our Engineering Live. I'd like to thank everyone for watching today, as well as our panel. James Brown, Executive Director of the STEM Education Coalition, Vanessa Stratton, Senior Director of Programs for Project Lead the Way, and Glenn Sundin, the Executive Director of the Young Mind Awards. For the ECN team, I'm Janine Mooney. Thanks for watching.